Trajan is a commander that when he first released, everyone was extremely hyped, but ever since then, he's kind of fallen under the radar. Today, I'll be telling you why I think Trajan is actually still very powerful, and in some ways, he's even more powerful than he was when he first released. If you want to learn more about Trajan, or if you're investing in a Trajan, or even if you have a Trajan, I really do recommend watching this video because I'm going to be giving you a few pairs. I'll talk about his skills, I'll talk about possibly talents, and when you should really invest in a Trajan. And at the end of the video, I'll tell you, is he truly worth it? Let's start off with Trajan's skills. First of all, his active skill is a 1000 rage requirement. He deals direct damage of 300 to his current target, and troops led by this commander and nearby allied troops gain 25% increased skill damage for 3 seconds, and 40 rage per second, so basically 120 rage. However, incoming damage is increased by 25% for 3 seconds. Now, the way I'm reading this is you will obviously gain a bunch of skill damage buffs for your marches and a bunch of rage for your marches. I think only Trajan will be taking this increased damage because otherwise it wouldn't be that good of a buff. It would kind of be a nerf in my opinion. However, I really like the buffs he is giving. However, he is going to be taking a lot more damage. So him getting hit with more skills, taking more damage is a bit bad, especially if he's just throwing his active skill. One thing to note is I don't know the exact number of troops that you can actually buff. I presume that his skill would only take effect to about 5 troops. I don't think it would take effect to any more than that. Otherwise, you could have just one person running a Trajan and they would be giving everyone stupid amounts of rage. I'm presuming that it would also target your own marches before it goes for other troops. So like, let's say a fellow kingdom member is battling and you're battling as well. I presume Trajan's active skill will take into account that your marches are on the field over the other person's. That's usually the way that these things work, especially with buffing commanders. Overall, a pretty powerful buff on his active skill. Damage factor is nothing, and he does take increased damage, but the buff is very powerful. Second skill, he gains 20% defense, so that's okay, and then 20% health while outside of Alliance territory. I really like that, especially for Ark of Osiris, that's nice. Canyon, that's nice. The defense and the health are fairly low numbers for the most part. Like if we look at commanders like Mehmed, his relic is 30% health, plus he's got a bunch of attack and skill damage. So I think that he is kind of lacking in regard on the stats on this skill, on his second skill. But he does redeem himself a little bit later. Third skill, troops led by this commander gain 10% increased capacity. When troops led by this commander consist of 3 or more different unit types, they would deal additional direct damage to the current target every time the active skill is used, damage factor of 300, and increased damage dealt to the target, so he's got a debuff now, by 20% for 3 seconds. That's really, really nice, okay? I think that doing that extra damage factor does make him, I guess, slightly more powerful in some way because he's going from 300 damage factor to 600. Still nothing amazing on damage factor, but it's much better than it was before. The debuff he's got is really nice. However, the downside is you have to use 3 unit types, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Fourth skill, while on the map, normal attacks grant stack of defense. This stack is 6% when maxed, and it lasts 10 seconds. With the duration resetting each time a new stack is gained. So if he gains a stack of defense and he hits someone and gains another stack, let's say the first stack was at 8 seconds left, he will end up with another 2 10-second stacks. So it will take 10 seconds for all stacks to wear off. Next thing to note is this stacks 10 times, and this can trigger once every 8 seconds. So I'm presuming he can only stack 1 stack of defense every 8 seconds, or every time it cancels, there's an 8-second cooldown before he can trigger more stacks of defense. I'm gonna guess it's the second version of that, because if it's once every 8 seconds, you'll have to battle for like 80 seconds. Kind of stupid, I doubt that would be the case. But overall, you'd get 60% defense, and that's stupidly high. Like if someone's hitting a march with 60% extra defense, they're going to get wrecked. Plus the 20% here, and if you got health on top of that, very, very powerful, and I do really like that. Kind of allows him to be more tanky when he's taking that increased damage from his active skill, and it's actually just making him very tanky in general. When you expertise him, you are improving your active skill. You deal now 400 damage factor instead of 300. Wow. And then now your troops gain 30% increased skill damage for 3 seconds and 50 rage per second. So you get an extra total of 30 rage extra, and you also deal about 5% extra skill damage in total. The incoming damage is not increased, and the time of that skill is not increased at all. So you can see there his skills are very, very buff-oriented, so he's really buffing your marches, he's really making them more powerful, he's kind of amplifying them. But there are a few major downsides. First of all, he's taking that increased damage on his active skill. I don't really like that, and it's all damage of 25%, so that is a lot of damage. Next thing, I also don't really like how you have to run the 3 troop types here, but there's one thing to mention. When Trajan first released, this was like really, really bad because there was no leadership gear at all. So if we go into the blacksmith now, you can see you can actually make a leadership set. The garb of the glorious goddess is your leadership set. When he first released, there was no leadership, so you either had to go all in on one type of like gear and possibly talent it with leadership, or nowadays you can just get the leadership gear, and if you don't like some of the pieces or you end up not using Trajan, you could still use it on another leadership march, or B, you could mix and match it with other commanders. For example, chassis of the glorious goddess are really good, the boots are really good, the gloves are really nice with archers. So you can see there's actually like a safety net on the gear for Trajan compared to before, where if you made gear talented with leadership and then Trajan becomes like out of the meta or becomes bad, you've kind of got this useless leadership gear that you can't use. At least in this situation, at the worst case, you're losing out on 2 legendary pieces, but it's not as bad as losing out on the whole 6 that you used to when you ran Trajan. The other downside to Trajan is you are basically doing no skill damage at all. He does nothing, so in terms of skill damage, he's not going to be doing anything. In terms of dealing damage, he's not going to be doing much. So there are 2 routes you could take with Trajan pairings. First off, you could go for a damage commander. For example, you could go with a Honda Tadakatsu, my personal preference for a Trajan. Honda does benefit from having more troops, obviously. I think it's whenever he has more than 2 troops, he gains a bunch more damage. And if it's got more than 3 units, I think it's even more. So I think running Honda with Trajan is certainly a very good idea. Honda's got a lot of tankiness, especially if you expertise him. He's also got a bunch of capacity here. He does extra skill damage, especially the lower his HP gets. He also has a bunch of damage taken reductions. He deals even more damage. You can see he's really a very powerful commander. He's also got a really nice march speed reduction that I want to make sure I can point out because it's on his passive skill slot. It will stack with everyone. His damage factor is really, really nice if you could use him as the primary. However, it is a higher rage requirement and you're probably best off just using him as the secondary anyways. If you don't have a Honda or do not want a Honda, you could obviously consider Mehmed and Julius Caesar. They're the only 2 relic commanders I really recommend with anything because Mehmed is just such a generic commander. He's kind of like a Honda 2.0. Well, I guess Honda's like a Mehmed 2.0. Mehmed's relic is super powerful and I think it's quite well with Trajan getting that extra health, making you more tanky. Caesar gives you a lot more march speed and gives you a bunch more all damage, so that's also really, really nice. However, you do kind of want a more rage-heavy commander with Caesar. And you can see Trajan's talents, they're not really rage-oriented. You kind of have to throw one active skill for them to really become effective. Another pair to mention is definitely Ethelfled with Trajan. Ethelfled's debuff is massive and it's certainly very powerful with Trajan. Having Trajan becoming a support and debuff commander is certainly a good option, and I think that it's one of the most run marches in the whole of Ark of Osiris. Most people run a Trajan Ethelfled because her debuff is crazy good. She's got a passive slow as well. She's got a bunch of counterattack damage taken reductions. And in total on her active skill, you can deal 4,000 damage factor, so that's quite a bit. Now, if you just want to go pure buffs, if you go into the integration section, you can see here we got Mulan. And Mulan is actually a really, really good commander. One thing to note with her relic, she actually makes you take a bunch of damage reduction. So having a Mulan with your Trajan allows you to take a bunch of reduced skill damage. So in the end, that increased all damage he is taking is not as bad, especially with her health on top of that. Mulan also has a fair amount of damage taken reduction. It's a 5% here when surrounded. And when attacked, there's a chance to reduce the target's rage. She also has a damage increase here, so she's dealing even more damage to the opponents. And also you can see that she does have a bunch of increased stats, so I think that's really nice with her. She's really just there to buff your other marchers. I'm pretty sure this will last 3 seconds once you expertise her, so you do really want to expertise Mulan if you're running her with Trajan. And that means you may have to use some gold heads on her. Now, when would I recommend investing in Trajan? Well, there's a really, really simple answer. If you are running more than 6 marches, or even if you're running 5 marches, one of them should be a Trajan. Trajan's buffs are just stupidly powerful, and if you run him with any buffing commander, he's going to be really good. I think you should probably use the echelon formation just to get even more buffs from him, but if you're running him with someone like Honda, you may change your mind on that. Having Trajan as an amazing buff commander in your kit is definitely going to make all your other marches just pack that little bit extra punch, and I think in the end he's actually worth it. For most low spender free-to-plays though, he may not be as valuable because you probably will not be running 5 proper solid marches yet, and even if you are, you may not be able to afford a 6th march every KVK reliably, so it's probably not worth getting Trajan if you're not spending a fair amount of money. Now, if you are whaling, he's definitely a must-have commander, and I think that he's just super valuable for almost every murderable in those situations. So overall, Trajan is still a good commander. That's already been done and decided. If you're running more than 6 marches, great commander. But is he a good investment is a better question. I think that's kind of a yes and a no. If you are running those 6 marches, like I said, he's probably still going to be a good investment. If you are not running 6 marches yet, he may not be the best investment because he may become outclassed in the future. I'm sure that Lilith is going to cash in on their new buff commander card and choose a new commander with better power creep, possibly more damage factor, possibly higher buffs, something like that. I'm sure that's going to happen within the next 2 years, so if you are investing in Trajan, he may be better short term. However, he may still pair very well with a new commander who may be giving a lot of buffs as well. So overall, I think Trajan is kind of a mediocre investment. Not too bad, not too good. Now, I just want to say, guys, if you disagreed with anything I said in this video, please do let me know in the comments. And I also just want to ask, please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by June when I start my All Siege Restart account. It's going to be one wild ride, and trust me, you're going to want to be subscribed for it. Now, if you did enjoy watching, I do hope that I see you in the next one.